the beginning of Ramadan. How are you guys feeling about that? Any questions, any ideas, anybody want to share anything concerning the approaching month of Ramadan? If not, mashallah, I looked, in preparation for class today, and I saw that it appeared from what Oranna sent me that people were interested in continuing this thread about, forgotten Sunan of the Prophet ﷺ, aspects of the prophetic way that seem to have disappeared, or things that have been forgotten. And one that I was thinking about that definitely comes to mind, and this is something for people like me and Eric and others to consider, is being handy around the house and assisting with domestic responsibility. There was a woman named Amra. She came to the Prophet. She came to Aisha radiallahu anha, wa radiallahu anhuma, may God be pleased with them both, Amra and Aisha. And she just said, كيف كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في بيتي? How was the messenger of God when he was at home? And you get the sense from her question that maybe someone was doing something different, right? That she had a hard time reconciling with what she thought would be the prophetic norm, right? And there's a lot of this, people that, sisters that maybe in the name of religious responsibility, maybe in the name of cultural commitments, meaning this is just the way that I've seen it done, right? And if anybody chooses to serve their family in any way, certainly there's a reward for them in that action, in any way, right? Inna Allah la yudi'u ajra al-muhsinin. Allah does not cause the good deeds of the spiritually excellent to be lost. So that if a woman decides to take on all of the domestic responsibility, and she's dedicated to an ethos in which her husband never lifts a finger, for a domestic task or a domestic chore, then inshallah, this will be a source of great, reward for her. But Amra asked Aisha, how was the Prophet ﷺ when he was at home? Meaning, literally, what was his sunnah? How was he as, a husband? And she began, radiallahu anha, may God be pleased with her, she said, kana basharan min al-bashar. He was a human being like other human beings, which it's interesting, in many other places, when Aisha radiallahu anha was questioned about the Prophet ﷺ, she would always magnify his virtue. His character was the Quran. He was like a walking Quran. I'll tell you something very intimate and personal about the Prophet ﷺ. In the last third of the night, when every lover wants to be closest to the one they love the most, he always went to pray to Allah. But on this question, she didn't talk about the height of his prophetic virtue. She didn't talk about his worship. She didn't talk about his sense of humor, or she began with kana basharan min al-bashar. He was, a person like any other person. And then she said, yafli thawba, he would mend his own clothing, right? Yafli thawba, he would mend his clothing, right? So if the clothing of the Prophet ﷺ, needed, to be repaired, if, he had holes in his clothes, he did not give that to anyone else. And it's interesting that she mentioned that he would mend his own clothing, because I think of all the things, of all the skills, if we took a survey of, household skills, domestic skills that men lack, I'm thinking sewing in our day and age that men and women lack. I'm thinking sewing would probably come somewhere near the top. Things that, like, Now, for very simple things, we have to seek a seamstress. Whereas like my grandmother could sew, right? I grew up with my grandmother. It was very, if this happened, she could perform simple functions with a needle and thread, right? They were just handy in that way. My wife can crochet, but I don't think she can sew. And I certainly cannot sew. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yafli thawba, he used to sew his own clothes. He would patch, he would mend his own clothes. Wa yahlubu shata, and he would milk his own goat. And milking goats, this was of all the domestic responsibility that men felt like this is something women were supposed to do. Milking goats was one of those things, right? Milking cows was one of those things. So Aisha is intentionally kind of flipping this sister's paradigm by informing her, those domestic chores that we think of as being strictly relegated to women, the Prophet used to do those, right? So mending clothes, milking goats. And the last thing she said, وَيَخْدِمُ نَفْسَ, and he would serve himself, right? He was not in his home, as Egyptians say, sayyid, right? This tyrannical leader being waited upon hand and foot, incapable of doing anything for himself or his guest, where he's able to sit back and just enjoy conversation and socializing, and the woman of the house is running around furiously trying to make sure that everyone has what they need and that her husband has what he needs. She said, "Yakhdimu nafsa." He would serve himself, right? The Prophet ﷺ did not demand that we serve him in that way, that we serve him his food, or we serve him his drink, or that we fluff his pillows, or that we raise his legs if he's resting. Yakhdimu nafsa. I remember reading this, and one of my teachers said to me, this is one of the lost sunan of the Prophet ﷺ. This is one of those prophetic traditions that has completely been lost to time, that has completely been overrun by cultural expectations that domestic chores are relegated to women. Now, my teacher was speaking in, I think in the Arab and particularly in Egyptian, context. In a lot of contemporary cultures, men do house chores. Hold on one second, I'm sorry. You do have, a lot of, modern, households in which, men assist or take the lead or initiate, and also take pride, in their ability to be helpful, and to serve their families in that way. But this is a lost sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ said, Sayyidul qawmi khadimuhum, right? The leader of a people is their servant. And in another tradition, khadimul qawmi sayyiduhum, and the servant of a people is their leader. So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting how things that were, an authentic aspect, things that were authentic aspects of prophetic practice, they become first de-emphasized and then completely, jettisoned, cast aside, and forgotten, right? So any questions about any of that, or comments, ideas? I just opened a huge can of worms in my own house. You guys are just chilling out today. I want some exchange, inshallah. Ismail, what are you thinking?
I was gonna make a joke about our mouths being sewed shut and not being able to unsew them, but no, I mean this makes sense, right? It's more active engagement than I think the stereotype of like a Homer Simpson dad or husband is.
And I think too, I mean, I think we fail to realize that this is really time consuming and mental space consuming work. It's easy to dismiss not only the significance, but the consumptive nature of such task, this kind of work. A lot, people that are dedicated to keeping really, really clean homes, clean kitchens. I mean, this is stuff that requires attention multiple times daily. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. No, it's real work. I mean, in the kind of the economics theory, right, is that we are drastically under calculating GDP because we don't account for the work that's done that's not explicitly tied to a salary.
Yeah. No, I totally believe that. One of my friends, he works in finance. His wife is a homemaker, right? And he said that he gave his wife a check for $1 million. He told her, don't try to cash it because it's but this is just an expression of what I know I owe you. I realize, and I think coming from him, seeing as though he worked in finance, I've calculated it. Over the course of the last, I think they've been married for 21 years. This is about what I owe you. But don't cash the check yet. But I'll give you the heads up when you can cash it. And that small gesture of just acknowledgement of kind of the significance of what she does really went a long way. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Other questions, ideas, could be about this, could be about anything else, anything you guys are thinking about. We can normally count on Asma or Allah to ask something that gets us thinking, gets us talking, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. See, I knew I could count on Allah, mashallah.
So I guess my question is really based off of a selfish situation that happened this weekend, unfortunately. So without going into too much detail, and I think there's probably much from the Sunnah to draw from it that I'm not aware of. So basically, there was a Islamic marriage ceremony for someone in my extended family, and it went really, really poorly.
Oh, wow, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I was really bewildered by it, to be honest with you.
It wasn't your sister, was it?
No.
Okay.
No, alhamdulillah, no, it was not my sister. But basically, the dispute was about mahar, and the couple did not agree on it in advance. And long story short, there was extensive yelling between the mothers, the uncles. I mean, the bride almost left, and her mom almost forced her not to sign the
I've seen such scenarios. It's really, really bad. But it's I don't know. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. Please.
No. Yeah. So I mean, I am actually, so I'm, I think members of my family were absolutely in the wrong, and I've already spoken with them, and I'm trying to come up with ways to, creatively smooth things over. And I'm wrecking my brain to because it was in front of her whole family. It was in front of the bride's entire family. And so we need to like earn her trust, earn their whole trust back. And I'm wondering if there's anything in the Sunnah or otherwise that you think would be wise for us to do.
I think first, apologizing and then maybe attempting to explain, because I find that with mahar, there's a generational gap in our understanding of the utility of mahar. You see, so for a lot of modern women that, either grew up, whether or not they plan on working is really immaterial, their understanding of themselves is as women that have great personal financial capability. You see what I'm saying? It's like, I think for a lot of those women, mahar is correctly symbolic. It's a symbolic gift through which we commence marriage with this act of goodness, right? And that's why, in America, a mahar is usually always a ring. It's never money, it's never gold, it's never diamonds. Depending on the groom's financial standing, the ring could be larger, smaller, of an intermediate size, different precious metals, different stones, etc. But there isn't, I've never heard in an un-Islamic context, or non-Islamic context is perhaps a better way of saying that. I've never heard of any intense debate or scrutiny over mahar. It's like, he puts the ring in and that's it. A lot of our parents, even though many of our parents are educated and they have careers, they still retain an understanding of mahar that, if the marriage were to break down, and they might not even know that they're referencing this, the mahar is intended to be the woman's security. It's the bride's security. It's something that, as she enters this marriage, she has some very significant, substantial personal investment in her, right? So that no matter what happens after this, at the very least, that was something that was secured as a right of hers that she will always enjoy, no matter what happens after this. For people who understand the mahar in that way, they always think the mahar should be higher, right? They always think, so someone who's thinking about a symbolic mahar, they might say, a ring in $5,000, right? A ring in, a ring, $10,000, something, $15,000, right? Maybe at the $20,000. Someone that's thinking about the mahar as, an aspect of my security or my daughter's security as an individual, not as a member of this man's family, or her newfound family, but as an individual, they're always thinking higher numbers. They're thinking 45,000, 50,000, 35,000. And I've often seen these understandings of mahar overlap, and people, and because I'm just there to do the nikah, it's like, I feel like maybe I would be out of place to step in and kind of referee this a little bit. Like, I think there's two separate cultural understandings of mahar. One party is understanding this is just a symbolic gesture, and the other is understanding this is like something that's given in lieu of alimony or something like that. You know what I'm saying, right? So you have that. In your particular situation, without knowing kind of the details, I would just try, and I realize that I love Muslims and I love Palestinians. Was everybody Palestinian?
No, so some were Lebanese and some were Palestinian.
I love the people of Lebanon and Philistine, but I'll say, man, sometimes Muslims, and the Arab in particular, man, and I'm not letting Daisys off the hook. And I'm not letting African Americans off the hook. Man, we can really be grudge holding people. Goodness gracious. You know, if someone is guilty of a slight, through which I lost face, or through which I feel my dignity was compromised. I've seen people not speak for 20 years, man, 15, 20 years. And we're not talking about like, a major allegation of abuse or sexual assault, or those. I'm talking about like something like what appears to have taken place at this wedding. What I would try to do is giving gifts, right? The Prophet ﷺ said, tahadu wa tahabu, right? Giving gifts and, trying to meet and just explaining that we're still getting to know each other. We're still getting to know each other, right? It would be a shame for us to, as families joining each other, it would be a shame for us to, give up on really blending our families before we've even really gotten to know each other. It sounds like this was a great misunderstanding, and that, I'm sorry, Allah, hold on. Makita, can you please go downstairs with your iPad, baby? Jazakallah khair. This was a major misunderstanding, and that misunderstanding was amplified by the fact that we really didn't have any real thorough foreknowledge of each other that could kind of rein us in, if you will, when things began to go left. Because sometimes it's like, people are passionate about certain positions, and things start going left. I'm speaking in general. But if we have a knowledge of one another and we've built some trust, right? Maybe it's that knowledge and that trust that really prevents things from spiraling completely out of control. We ended up with, this substantive disagreement, and we didn't have that knowledge of each other and that trust of each other that could kind of rein us in. So things really, really went all the way off the rails. And we do apologize for that. We do apologize for that. Please accept this gift as a token of our apology. We would love to get together as a family to eat and to really celebrate the union of our families in the way that we would have liked the initial wedding celebration to have gone. But we do apologize. And then I think, in terms of, how that's approached, offer that apology and try to do so in as selfless a manner as possible and with no expectations. Right? If they take your gift and they throw it back at you and they say, no, we never want to do any kind of joint event, gathering, function with you crazy people ever again in life, just say, mashallah, we pray that Allah, inspires you with the change of heart at some point. Right? Don't shoot back and say, so now you guys are too good. Well, it was you too. I think, talk about a forgotten sunnah, mashallah. We seem to have forgotten how to apologize, right? How to without qualifications and without a retort or a rebuttal if our apology is not initially accepted. See, some people, they start out very sweet. Oh, would you please forgive me? And if the other person displays reluctance to forgive, the sweetness just turns sour. It's like, will you please forgive me? I don't know. I need some time to think about it. Oh, you need some time to think about it. Well, while you're at it, why don't you think about what you said to me? And it's like, no. Just apologize. And, what I'm saying? If they accept, mashallah, if they need some time in accepting, mashallah. And with time, I mean, one thing about family that is blended through marriage, there's going to be significant moments, in their collective lives in which they won't be able to escape each other. The birth of children, first-time home ownership, housewarming parties, things. I mean, we're going to be together at some point, right? So we might not be, and then, the other thing, and this is just thoughts coming to my mind, I trust that both sides in this debate about mahar, right? This debate about, a marital gift or a dowry, I trust that both sides were probably arguing out of a deep love for their family member, right? The bride's family arguing out of a deep love for our daughter, our sister, our cousin, our niece, our granddaughter. We love her, and we're only arguing because we feel like in some way she's not getting her just due, or she's being shortchanged, or scant consideration is being given to the precious jewel that she is, or whatever their justification. And I also trust that the groom's family was arguing on behalf of the groom, that if she knew the quality of man that she was marrying, she wouldn't dare quibble about some dollars and cents. If she knew how special he was, and how diligently he is prepared to work, and how assiduously he is prepared to work to provide comfort for her and their children, there's no way she would quibble over the amount of the mahar. This is only the beginning. She's acting as if he's never going to give her anything else in life. We're not that way. We're a generous family. He's a generous person. Why are you making such an issue of this? Let's say both sides were arguing because they love their family member. Then let us reconcile out of love for these family members. Why make their lives difficult because we can't get our stuff together, right? They're together. They're newlyweds. They love each other. It's our families that appear to be having the problem, right? It's us that appear to have the problem. If we really love them, why not try to make this easier for them, right? Because, in-law drama, and I just want to say, I've never had any. And if you ever meet my mother-in-law or my father-in-law, be sure to tell them that I said that. I've never had any. I've never had any issue with my in-laws, or my in-laws having issues with my family. Not a single issue with my in-laws, right? I don't know if my wife can say the same thing. In fact, I know she would not. Speaking from experience, but not disclosing too many details. Oh man, being between your mom and your wife, or your sister and your wife, it's just not anywhere that anybody wants to be. Oh my God. It's just not anywhere that anybody wants to be. So just thinking about the added stress and the unnecessary tension produced by that kind of strife. Let's both of us help our family members to begin their life together without any of that hanging in the purview. And these are maybe some points, your family can attempt to make, if you're seeking reconciliation. I don't know if I'm way off base or kind of on base, or
no, you're absolutely, you have essentially captured the entire essence of the dispute. So no, I think
I've been around a while, man. I've been around a while. I've seen quite a bit in our community,
Yeah. No, I think that's super helpful, and I'm definitely gonna tell my talk to my sisters tonight about like this is our game plan, gifts, and you know, obviously a sincere apology and inshallah. Yeah.
You know, no, and just the fact that it's something that you're thinking about is, you know, mashallah, I think a testament to just how thoughtful and conscientious, you know, you are. You know, the fact that, you know, what happened at the wedding doesn't sit well with you, that you feel, that, you know, that definitely didn't capture our family, you know, in our best light. You know what I'm saying? It definitely wasn't the best expression of who or what, you know, we are. Now, when I did your wedding, your family was absolutely lovely, and Eric's family was absolutely lovely. So I don't, you know, subhanAllah, you know, Eric's mom was regal, and his father was very gentleman-like, and your mom was, mashallah, very, very elegant and very sociable, and your sister and your uncles. I'm thinking, are you talking about the same family?
It's the other side. It's the other side of the family.
Okay, mashallah. Okay. I get it. Alhamdulillah. So, mashallah. Other questions, ideas, thoughts?
Assalamu alaikum, Ustad in class.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Samar, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
You know why I call you instead of Dr. Harfi? Because, you know, I like to, when people have accomplished great things, I actually like to address them in ways that, you know, acknowledge what they've accomplished. I once called you Dr. Harfi, and you said, no, Summer, my father is Dr. You said, my father is Dr. Harfi.
My sister's here too, Zainab.
Okay,
we both go by first names, just Doctor too, subhanAllah. But just to follow up to Sister Alaa's story, I think something that came to mind is one of the Sunnahs is also giving advice in private, like the other thing, I guess, from a mental health perspective, I was thinking two things. One is that one of the top 3 issues when it comes to marital issues and conflicts in the Muslim community is in-laws. So the reality is in some way it's going to be present, and a lot of the time it's not about the, you know, the issue that seems to be inflated, whether it's financial, there's something internal, like you said, you know, this reassurance, empowerment, you know, they do respect each other, but the intention and the impact, the way it hits can be very opposite. It's like we want to just instill a strong foundation of trust, but then the other party might feel like you're doubting us, you're questioning us, you're going back on what you said. But I feel like a lot of the time, sometimes like at Khalil Center, we have premarital counseling sessions, and I've heard of sometimes the couple will come in with in-laws, which can seem like different, but it's very culturally responsive, like having the in-laws in the premarital or in the marital session, because there's a real effect. And having a third party, whether religious or somebody who's religious but trained in mental health services or has some training, or somebody who's a mental health professional who has, you know, some grasp on Islamic understanding, just to talk about these boundaries and validating their, you know, the dignity and the respectful place of each member, but also the boundaries that, you know, even simple stuff as somebody will be like, oh, my mother-in-law, she's like your mom. No, a mother-in-law is not like somebody's mother. You know, the relationship of a spouse with their parent is different than the other spouse and the in-law. So I think just as a suggestion, I think even in Islam, I think seeking, you know, istikhara and istishara. So seeking, what's istikhara in English?
Istishara is advice, you know, seeking counsel, and istikhara is like a prayer of decision making.
Yeah, so I want to say, like, even like a thought of both, like just doing the istikhara part about even how to approach it, but also seeking consultation, you know, as the couple or as the families.
Yeah, you know, subhanAllah, I think that tends to be something that people considering marriage underestimate. That, you know, you marry into a family, and that, you know, you're marrying this person, and maybe diligent people are seeking premarital counsel, and they're trying to make sure that they begin their married lives together with an understanding, but maybe they haven't considered, you know, your family, my family, what kind of shared understanding do we have? Is it necessary that we have a shared understanding, or, you know, what are the boundaries, what roles, what kind of involvement? You know, all of those things turn out to be, you know, much more significant than I think people considering marriage, you know, anticipate.
Yeah, and subhanAllah, sometimes these moments, and I know I like the way you're talking about it, they can be like cringe worthy, like just thinking about those moments,
For
you know,
sure.
a celebration.
Sure.
And subhanAllah, I've seen like working with individuals or couples or families, sometimes those difficulties define the relationship in a positive way, like overcoming those challenges. So inshallah, may Allah just bring union and healing, you know, the couple and family.
Ameen, ameen, ya Rabbal
Yeah.
Alameen.
I actually have another question too,
Bismillah.
on a different topic, Ramadan related, and it's probably one of those recurrent, but tadhkir and reminders are helpful. So the scenario is, so there's somebody who's a convert who, due to COVID situations, was stuck with family members or relatives who do not know that this person's Muslim.
Okay.
So Ramadan passed, and of course they weren't able to fast because it could risk their, you know, their safety. It could risk their sense of peace to do that. So now, before Ramadan, they have the opportunity. So they're not in that setting. They have the opportunity to make up the fast. But of course, there's two things. There isn't time to make up, of course, a full Ramadan. And then on the other hand, there is also possible kind of health difficulties of trying to make all the fasts in a short period of time. So what is your suggestion or recommendation or understanding of options?
Yeah, there's a few options here. You know, if a person missed fasting for the entire month of Ramadan for a legitimate reason, and that's a legitimate reason. If it's like, you know, I'm in a very precarious situation that if I'm discovered to be Muslim, that could jeopardize my housing, maybe my physical safety, maybe my security, then she was correct or he was correct in not fasting. What the general rule is that those 30 days of fasting must be made up before the next Ramadan, right? They must be made up before the next, you know, Ramadan. If you fail to make them up before the next Ramadan, then you have to pay a kafara. You know, you have to feed, you know, an indigent person for every day that you fail to make up, right? In this case, it's not that they simply neglected to make up that, you know, those days. There's also a health consideration, right? Like, so I didn't make up the days, and there's a health consideration here that must be taken into account. If I were to attempt 60 consecutive days of fasting or 60 days of fasting, you know, close to each other, that could entail some health risk. So I would say fast as much as they can in the lead up to Ramadan, fast in the month of Ramadan, and then just make the 30 days up when they can, inshallah. You know, if they have to space them out, just make an intent to make those 30 days up after this Ramadan, inshallah. Does that make it clear?
Yeah, very much so. Thank you. Jazakallah khair.
Other ideas, maybe Ramadan related questions.
Since I'm on the mic, I'm gonna have another comment that's been on my, I probably brought it up maybe before Ramadan, but I just find it fascinating and real. And I think with Ramadan and the excitement, it's very important to be aware of our enemies before Ramadan. And subhanAllah, just a reminder, I know it's not like there's a hadith or a saying specific to it, but it's inspired by something related to it. And my understanding of the shaitan being an evil psychologist. So on one hand, of course, in Ramadan, we know that the shaitan is tied up. And the shaitan knows us in ways that we might not constantly be conscious or aware of ourselves and our inclinations. But I've noticed, like, and I've heard this once in a different class, where saying that the shaitan gets us hooked on bad habits that we might continue engaging in throughout Ramadan, because he knows that we're excited for Ramadan, but also at the same time is not going to be as present, or the shayateen as present as they would other times. So this is just a reminder to myself first, but kind of being aware, like sometimes people will get hooked on certain shows or certain relationships. And I've noticed with myself or with, people that I work with, that sometimes these are sparked within the month before Ramadan.
No, that's a good mulahadha, good recognition. But no, I think that, people don't realize that this whole matter of the shayateen being restrained in the month of Ramadan is something differed upon by scholars. Some people say all of the shayateen are restrained, right, in the month of Ramadan. And even those people say, but you still have the other three enemies of people, right? The four enemies of people: shaitan, your nafs, right, the appetite of soul, hawa, caprice, and dunya. So that even if all of the shayateen are restrained, you still have the other three that can also produce ghawa, that can produce misguidance or wrong action. So the world never enters kind of a paradisiacal state in the month of Ramadan, right? Some people say it's Iblis wa junudu. So Iblis and his minions are restrained in the month of Ramadan, but the personal shaitan, right? The shaitan the Prophet ﷺ mentioned accompanies all of us. That shaitan is not restrained. Right? That shaitan is not restrained. So you have these differing kind of views, but we do know, right? If you look at kind of the cumulative effect of these prophetic reports, we do know that Ramadan is supposed to be a time in which it is easier to focus on our devotional practice, easier to connect with scripture, easier to refrain from some of the bad habits in which we engage outside of the month of Ramadan, etc. Right? That's kind of the cumulative effect of all of that, differing opinion. But yeah, you make a very, very good point that for some of that demonic, shaitanic insinuation, if the practice that shaitan is enticing us to engage has become habitual to us, right? At this point, it's a habit-forming behavior. The nafs is engaged with the behavior. You don't even need the waswasa of shaitan. You don't need the whisper. You don't need the insinuation of shaitan, right? The nafs is now engaged with that practice. And this is why Ibn Ata'illah, the famous Alexandrian scholar, he said, probably taking the latter opinion, or the former opinion rather, he said, work on refining your nafs. Work on refining the soul, because it is your enemy that never departs you. Even the shayateen depart you during the month of Ramadan. Right? So work on what you are. He said, because this is something you will always be forced to contend with. So mashallah, Summer, you always offer very useful and beneficial insights. Alhamdulillah.
Thanks. Inspired by the space, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. The space is good, mashallah. Other thoughts, ideas, questions, opinions, rebuttals, challenges? Mashallah, the floor is still open. If not, Summer, Steve, and I can just have a conversation.
Steve's smiling.
Alhamdulillah. Steve, how are you, brother?
What's up, brother? I'm good. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Man,
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I said I'm missing you, brother.
I'm missing you too, man. We got to get together soon, man.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Indeed, indeed. Seems like this weather is letting up a little bit, so inshallah it won't be long now.
No, not at all. Not at all.
You know,
So how's everything at the home? How's your wife's neck?
alhamdulillah. She appears to be, healing up. She's on the mend. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, that's a tough injury. That takes some time.
Yeah, it does. It does. It does. But I think she's, ready to return to physical activity, and so inshallah we'll see how it goes. We're holding our breath.
So how are you, brother?
Alhamdulillah, ala kulli hal, man. I praise Allah in all situations. Alhamdulillah. But it's a good time, man. I mean, these days, if you have, there's so much we have to be thankful for, man. MashaAllah,
Indeed.
my family is together, everybody's healthy.
Oh, yeah.
My children are relatively happy. With an emphasis on relatively. Things appear to be going well, man. So, we thank Allah for that.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Alhamdulillah. Oh, mashallah. See, your wife changed it went from Summer to Summer and Steve.
Yeah, I'm moving on up.
You're on Zoom now.
I'm on a whole nother level.
Man, look. So, does anybody have anything they want to discuss? If not, maybe we'll wrap up a little early.
It looks like Sister Esma posted on the chat a question about what is the Islamic view on organ donation?
The Islamic view on organ donation, we actually, mashallah, when I was at Azhar, we actually studied organ donation. I think in my second year in our Qadaya Fiqhiyya al-Mu'asara, contemporary fiqh issues. And it really came down to the utility of the practice. Of course, the jutha, or the corpse, in Islam has a sacrosanct status, right? We don't what's the word I'm looking for? Yani, my
Everything of defiling.
Right, we don't defile, we don't mutilate is the word that I'm looking for. We don't mutilate, we actually treat the bodies of the deceased with great consideration and respect, whether Muslim or not, right? We don't, the Prophet ﷺ, and this is kind of one of those more gruesome aspects of the prophetic. The Prophet ﷺ had to intervene, in pre-Islamic Arabian society. It was actually a part of victory to defile the bodies of the deceased of the opposing army. You would go around and cut them up, and this very perverse kind of celebration in military victory. And the Prophet ﷺ forbade that. Said, no, we don't do that. We don't mutilate and defile the bodies of our enemies, even the slain enemies on the battlefield. So the jutha, or the corpse, in Islam has great respect, attached with it and associated with it. If one is going to make an incision on the corpse and remove an organ from the corpse, it has to either be for A, to save a life, right? We're saving a life, or B, to participate in some kind of scientific study or inquiry which aims to save life. It can't be, any kind of adventitious scientific exploration. Can't be, we're doing this to see if human hearts can work in baboon bodies, to see if baboons are really the foreparents of human beings. Or it has to either be to directly save life or to participate in scientific inquiry which aims to save life. If organ donation or just mutilating cadavers and corpses and things of that sort is done, it must be for just those two purposes and no other purpose. If that makes any sense. Right, and Nader, asks, how about autopsy? I actually don't know the position on autopsy. I mean, just using some of the tools of Islamic legal thinking, one would think, well, what is the purpose of the autopsy? If it's just to determine this person's unique cause of death, I'm guessing that might be disallowed. But if it were something like a pandemic and we're trying to, like, people are just dying and we have to start opening their bodies to figure out how is this happening, then it would strike me as something commendable in Islamic law, right? But if it's just like a person died and there's no maslaha, right? The only maslaha, the only benefit we intend to realize through the autopsy is just informing the family of exactly how they died. It would strike me as not a great enough social benefit to mutilate, defile, or otherwise make an incision on the body of the deceased. On the other hand, if it's like, we need to figure out how people are dying. People are just mysteriously or randomly, dying. And this is a very disturbing social phenomenon. And if we don't open their bodies, we won't figure out what's happening. I'm almost positive, just using the tools of Islamic legal inquiry, that would be something acceptable and allowed, in Islamic law. And Allah knows best.
Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. My name is Muhammad.
Nice.
I am Samar Harfi, brother-in-law.
Alhamdulillah, mashallah. Well, anyone related to Samar is a friend of ours, mashallah.
And I am a physician. I'm a cardiologist.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to shed some light on the topic you just mentioned about organ donation, if you don't mind.
Bismillah, please.
From Islamic and from also a medical perspective, if we have time. So in terms of organ donation, it is one of the essence of Islam to, of course, that protect life, protect brain, protect the society, protect the wealth, and protect family entity. Based on these five main essence of Islam, maqasid al-sharia, the main five main ones, you understand all the haram and halal easily. And if you look at the organ donation, blood donation is considered an organ donation. And donating not necessarily to be from a corpse, also can be from a live person. If you're compatible with me and I'm compatible with you, I can give you my kidneys. I can give you also part of my liver, which should save your life. And that's basically from Maqasid Sharia. If I'm saving someone's life, it is part of that part. And same thing with blood donation. Blood is considered an organ in medical field. It's that part. Now, with regards to autopsy, it is also very important from a medical legal, mainly medical, but also legal perspective. If someone dies in the hospital or dies outside the hospital, it's important that we give the option to the family. If it's natural cause, I would lead and help the family to understand this is a natural cause. Most likely it's heart attack. We know it's a heart attack. There's no reason to identify or do mutilate or open up the corpse or cut the corpse or do anything and delay the burial ceremony. And that can be in all faith, in Muslim faith or in Catholic or Jewish or all these faiths, that they don't allow mutilation or cutting or opening the corpse, and they wanted to have the burial ceremony as soon as possible. Now, for a legal perspective, someone comes in with unexpected death, a young person who was healthy and suddenly died. We do need, as from a legal perspective, an autopsy to make sure that he wasn't murdered, he wasn't poisoned, he wasn't killed, he did not do anything, and also to know from a genetic perspective that his person has a genetic disease, that we can prevent his family from having the same problem. I hope I'm not distracting you from your daughter or your family.
No. Alhamdulillah, I'm actually listening very intently. I just had to.
No, I have 3 kids too, so I understand, totally understand.
You were saying if, say, a youth comes in who appears to have died mysteriously, the family wants to know why, from a legal perspective, you were saying.
Yeah, from a legal perspective and also from a medical perspective, if a young person dies and we don't know what the cause of death, and it's unexpected to see a young person, like 20s, 30s, whether it's a drug overdose or whether it's a genetic disease, that if we figured out that genetic disease, that there is an abnormal organ in his body that ruptured, I would like to know that, because I can screen the family and prevent future death, prevent future complications.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, from Islamic view, it makes total sense. From a medical view, make total sense, and from a legal perspective as well. This is what I understood from me, reading around this topic from Islamic views, and also from a medical perspective, that it is a necessity and important to do these things, to investigate that.
No, mashallah. And this is one of the reasons why scholars of the text and scholars of the context have to sit together so that our community can develop these operational norms. Because, I might know, for instance, from an Islamic legal perspective, the bodies of deceased people have a sacrosanct status, that, they're not to be
correct,
necessarily harmed, mutilated, desecrated, etc. And I do know, as I knew, that if there's a compelling reason, like the maqsad of saving life, then yes,
correct.
There's no law of deen that should ever get in the way of saving life, right? If there is some particular law that appears to conflict with the goal of saving life, the goal of saving life takes precedent over that particular law, right? This is something that we know from Maqasid al-Sharia. I, however, did not know that in the case of someone dying mysteriously, there is a pressing need of performing an autopsy to make sure that further death is prevented, maybe among family members, maybe among colleagues if they work in the same facility. Maybe do you understand what I'm saying? That
yeah,
was,
absolutely.
That was more of a practical consideration that, as someone that does not have any background in medicine, I wouldn't have any knowledge of that consideration. But seeing as though you do have knowledge of that consideration, you can help me to take some of the tools of kind of my Islamic legal understanding and apply them effectively to reality on the ground as it really exists. And this is how I think people of different specializations and disciplines really need to be in conversation with each other. One of the great misfortunes of our community is we have scholars of Islamic law speaking as though they're scholars of everything. They're scholars of finance, they're scholars of medicine, they're sociologists, they're anthropologists. And it's like, no, the da'ira of our ikhtisas, right? The circle of our specialization is actually quite limited. When it comes to everything else, we should be active, curious, seekers of engagement with specialists. So, Muhammad, I really appreciate you. Jazakallah khair.
Oh my, thank you very much. And this is salam to Samar and Steve.
Alhamdulillah.
I'm recruiting.
Alhamdulillah. Other questions, considerations, maybe wise insights? MashaAllah, we just had a very wise, very practical insight. MashaAllah. Okay.
Just riffing on this for another moment, it sounds as though you can also, I think, make a general case that if there is data to be gained, or if there's more to know about how humans die, even if it doesn't directly affect the family, that that would be permissible, right? Or am I?
I mean, I think you can definitely extend that argument that way. I think where there would be not pushback, but counterbalance is that we don't want to desecrate or mutilate anyone's body without just cause. That's all. That's all the law is saying. There has to be some compelling reason. And if one argues that, data collection is a compelling enough reason, and this would be someone that kind of understands, the kinds of research that relies on the collection of data that, no, actually, doing an autopsy on this person may help us in some secondary, there's no person that needs their liver right now, but just understanding how they died might help us in the development of medicines and other kinds of critical interventions. We can never have enough information. I think that would be a consideration that the law would certainly countenance, that the law would certainly accept as valid.
Gotcha.
Thank you. But to my point though, in everything we were discussing, the goal is the preservation of human life, right? That the goal is the preservation of human life, whether it's through data collection or through direct intervention, the goal is the preservation of human life, right?
I think honestly, this conversation it reminds me of just the nature of Islam being applicable to every time and every generation is because it's very adaptable, and it's not either or. It's not like, oh, there's a religious space and then real, like the knowledge of the world in a different space. That it's a collaborative process.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
And you have,
go ahead, sorry.
Yes. Now, cremation does count as desecration. Cremation is something, as far as I know, it's I categorically impermissible, as far as I know. But the law is vast. Maybe if there was some compelling reason, like people had a very plague, or people had a very difficult time, burying their deceased, or something happened where there was this need, maybe the case could kind of reopen. But as far as I know, under normal conditions, cremation is categorically forbidden, as far as I know.
Yeah, because subhanAllah, like there was a documentary once about like the business of death, of like dying and death, and how in some countries, including in the US, it is extremely expensive to bury somebody, and so I know of people who took the cremation route simply because that was the cheapest option that they could access. Yeah.
And Muslims, the burial of our deceased, of our mota, this is a fard kifaya. This is a communal obligation, right? If someone in our community passes, it is a communal obligation that someone make sure that they have, takfeen, they have a kefin, and they have, mashallah. I'm gonna check that out, Ismail. Here to Eternity by a mortician. That someone, provides a plot of land, for their burial. Which, subhanallah, my eldest daughter, her mom passed away in Cairo, and she was buried in a plot of land that somebody donated hundreds of years ago to the students of Al-Azhar and their families. Subhanallah. Right? That was one waqf that didn't get seized by Tatmeen, or by the government. Other ideas, considerations, thoughts? Bismillah, we get in there, inshallah. It's always good to catch up with you guys. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ آمين يا رب العالمين. I look forward to seeing you guys next week.